Okay, guys, so let's talk about a subject that's not talked about enough in Magic, and that is practicing. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 of my personal tips on how to practice card magic. Now, these aren't strict guidelines of what you need to do. These are just things that I've learned along the way that greatly enhance my skills in card magic when it comes to practicing. These tips will not apply to everybody, but if you get 1 or 2 things out of here that you can work with, then that is excellent, and that is my goal. So, right off the bat, here's a bonus tip for you. It's sort of an honorable mention before we dive into this. And that is, you actually have to practice it, guys, okay? So sometimes, I've been guilty of this too. We learn a new trick or we buy a new trick and we immediately start doing it for people. Maybe we do it 1 or 2 times to figure out how it works, sure, but that's not practice. So you really have to sit down and get comfortable and get to know this trick or this move and really practice it a bunch before we are ready to perform that. So that's sort of a bonus tip before we get into it. So, and without further ado, let's hop right into these 5 tips. Okay, so tip number 1 is your working surface. Now, some of you, myself included, may have a close-up pad or a close-up mat, whatever you want to call it. Now, it's fun to practice on this because it feels nice. It's easy to pick things up. Cards spread nice on this close-up pad. But in the real world, out performing for real people, at restaurants or bars or whatever, you're not going to have a nice close-up pad. It's usually going to be a hard surface table, like a wooden table or a metal, whatever it might be. And so when you get comfortable and you get used to how this close-up mat feels when you practice, it's going to be a world of difference when you are forced to use a hard surface such as a wooden table or something like that. So my advice is to remove the close-up pad when you're practicing a trick that you plan to do for people, okay? So the reason for that is because you're going to get used to how this hard surface feels, and you're going to be forced to do things differently how you normally would on this close-up pad. For instance, a deck of cards does not spread the same on a hard table as it does on a soft surface. So you're going to have to find ways to make it look better or to make it work the way it should and alter these things in a way that will, fit your surroundings or your environment. On a close-up pad, it's very easy to just pick up a card or a coin because of that, because of the give that it has. Okay, so but on a table, cards and coins are flat, and so it's hard to pick things up. So you have to alter the way you do these things. And the cool part about this is once you learn the way a hard table works and the way you have to do things, you can apply secret actions into these different things that you have to do. For instance, moves like the Mexican turnover, you have to use a card in order for this move to work, and sometimes you have to use a card to pick up another card that's on a hardwood table. So why not combine the best of both worlds and do the secret action when you actually have to? Or maybe it's gathering the spread of cards that's on the table. It's kind of hard to do that with your fingers because there's no give on the hard table. So having a card in your hand and using it as a scoop or a spatula to scoop up that deck of cards, there's a lot of things you can do in regards to secret actions by doing this. And the cool thing about that is this looks perfectly natural because, well, there's no other way to do it. You know what I mean? So that's just some food for thought for you when it comes to practicing on a hard table. So let's go on to tip number 2. So tip number 2 is when you practice moves, don't look at your hands, okay? Yeah, I want you to get in the habit of looking at something else. Look at the wall as you practice maybe a pass or a side steal, because sometimes we get in this habit of just staring at our hands, and the worst part is when we do this, we tend to blink, right, as the secret action happens, because when we do that subconsciously, hey, if I don't see it, it's going to look great, right? So when we do a pass, we go, oh, that looked awesome, that looked invisible, but it's because we're blinking, we're not even looking at it. I mean, how weird would it be if we go to perform magic for people and we say, okay, now your card's in the middle, now it's on top. I mean, come on, that's going to look strange. And so you want to break out of that habit and get into the good habit of doing moves, secret actions while looking at somebody. And so just practice looking at the wall. And this, the reason why this works and the reason why it's so helpful is because some of these moves, like I said, the pass and the side steal, takes misdirection. And so when you look at somebody, that's natural misdirection for these secret moves, right? So you don't want them to look at what's happening. And so it's just perfect. I mean, it's the same thing if they were closing their eyes, right? So imagine if you don't see it, how can anybody else see it? So if they're looking at you, they're not seeing what you're doing. So to summarize that tip, don't look at your hands and don't blink as you do secret moves when you practice, okay? Tip number 3, and I think this is the most important tip on this video, is practicing your moves and practicing the trick itself is not enough, guys, okay? So if you do plan to go out and perform these miracles for real people and a real audience, you have to rehearse these tricks, okay? So practicing and rehearsing are kind of the same, but they're vastly different, okay? So what I mean by rehearsing is you actually want to say your script out loud and practice these tricks as though there are real people in front of you, okay? So put the pressure on and really try to get stressed out and imagine that you're doing this for real people, okay? So, and you really want to talk to these imaginary folks in front of you. You're going to look crazy if somebody's watching you, of course, but hey, who cares, okay? So you really want to say, hey, do me a favor, pick a name card. Just go through your whole script as if you're really doing it for people, okay? So go through the whole trick for real and, you know, as if there's somebody there for you. And I don't want you guys to just take the easy route. Don't half-ass it. Don't just do it in your head. I really want you to say your lines out loud and really act as though somebody's picking a card. Or maybe you have 2 imaginary people. Heck, use stuffed animals. I don't care. Just do whatever it takes to really rehearse these tricks. It's just like any other entertainer who rehearses these things, right? So singers, they have to rehearse their concert before they go live, right? It's the same thing, guys. So here's a good tip on that tip. So when you go to rehearse your tricks, what you want to do is get good enough at this rehearsal that you don't make any mistakes, okay? So mistakes can be missing a force, messing up a line, or stuttering, or something like that, or a weird pause. And so what I want you to do is go through the trick 3 times. If you can do it 3 times in a row, then the trick is probably pretty good to go out and perform it, okay? So 3 times in a row, no mistakes with the moves or your lines, and I think when you get to that point, then the trick is perfect and you're ready to perform it for all of your people. I don't know. So practice, 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 rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. 3 times, okay? 3 times, no mistakes, and you're good to go. Now, on scripting, just as a side note, guys, when people hear scripting, they think this means having to tell a boring story or something that relates to something else or whatever, some kind of thing that doesn't, something that people can't relate with. And all scripting is knowing what you're going to say at all times. And Pete McCabe wrote some wonderful books on this called Scripting Magic, and it's just absolutely wonderful. Highly, highly recommend these books. In a nutshell, scripting magic is all about having something interesting to say other than here's your card, now it goes in the middle, now we shuffle the deck. Now that's not a script, okay? So what scripting is actually saying nice things and entertaining things for your audience. It doesn't have to be a story, it doesn't have to be boring. It's just you'll learn how to simply talk to people, okay? But this video isn't about scripting, and it's not about presentation. Maybe I'll do a video on that, but for now we're focusing on practice. So here's tip number, was it around 3 or 4? I don't know. Tip number 4, it used to be mirrors, okay? So practicing in front of a mirror, you can see what you're doing and you can see what the audience sees. However, I think that's outdated because these days everybody has a phone and everybody has the ability to record themselves on these phones via video, right? So what I want you to do is take a move that you're working on and record yourself doing this, okay? So in front, set your phone maybe on a tripod if you have one, or if you don't have one, just use maybe a coffee cup or something like that. Just stand your phone up in front of you and record yourself doing this, doing these moves, and after you record it, I want you to watch it back and see if you flashed or see if any of your fingers were in a weird spot or if it looks weird. And if it did, then I want you to go back and try to find ways that you can correct these problems and just keep doing this over and over. Keep recording yourself, fixing these mistakes until finally you're at a point when you are watching this video and it looks totally invisible. It looks perfect to you. You might go through 100 takes before it looks invisible, and that's okay. That's called practice. You're not trying to post this video. This is for yourself. This is for your practice. You want to see what you're doing so you can fix your problems that you're having with this move. Because once you get to this point where it looks invisible to you on your phone on the small little screen and you can't even see any secret actions, then trust me, it's going to look totally invisible. Nobody's going to catch anything right in front of you, a real person, right? So, and that also goes back to tip number two, don't look at your hands as you're doing this. And so those two tips combined will make any move, any secret action be totally invisible, and it's just a good way to practice moves, guys. The reason why this tip is so valuable is because, sure, you can practice a move 100 times in a row, but you're not really observing it from somebody else's point of view, right? So the cool thing about watching it on the video is because you're looking at what somebody else will potentially see, and so combined with doing the move 100 times, and combined with you fixing your mistakes that you see on your camera, you're gonna be flawless, dude. So, last but not least, it's tip number 5, okay? So this kind of plays along with tip number 4 in a way, and I'll get to that. And this is, when you practice a move, for instance, a false cut, I want you to do the real thing that you're simulating, right? So if, like a false cut, do the real action, do a real cut, and then do the fake cut. And if they don't look the same, you want to practice until they do look the same, right? The whole idea of naturalness and being natural is doing natural actions, right? So if you can do a real cut, it should look exactly the same as a false cut. And so if they don't look the same, if they look totally different, it's going to look unnatural. And so the best way to see if these things look the same is, of course, recording on your phone, right? So just, you need to alter the way you do the false thing until it looks exactly like, or as close as possible, to the real thing. And that's really, in a nutshell, what Di Vernon told us, those two famous words, be natural. The whole idea behind that is just don't make things look weird, okay? So being natural is doing real actions, real natural actions. And so when you do these fake moves like false cuts, false shuffles, we tend to do it so unnaturally that they just look weird. They don't look like anything anybody would do outside of the secret move. So you just want to handle cards the way anybody would, just naturally handling cards, okay? So the whole idea of a good card magic is, not, you know, being so obvious with your moves that they look unnatural. And I think you're understanding what I'm saying at this point. And I hope that these tips can inspire you to practice these moves and be a better card magician. If I missed any important practice tips that you yourself do, let me know in the comments. We could have a nice discussion on things to do when you're practicing, and I'd love to hear them. Until next time, happy practicing. I love you guys.